Yeah.
Yeah, don't misgender them, Ben, in the intro. I won't cut it and you'll be canceled.
Dang it. I thought I was going to be surrounded by beautiful women today.
It's funny. I had a Patreon that I was supporting for like an actual play podcast, which is very, very inclusive. One of the podcasters actually transitioned like during the length of the podcast. And I had this submitted character that was going to be on the show. And as soon as the character comes on the show, they're misgendered. And I was like, no, don't do that to me.
Not my child.
Yeah, I reached out almost immediately, and like on the next episode, they issued like a big apology for misgendering them, and it was like yeah, it was like it's fine. If anyone's gonna do it, I'd rather it be the person who went through transition like on the podcast that I've been listening to for all this time. But thank you for correcting it because that was weird. So I'm used to getting misgendered regularly, being very being the way I look.
People don't realize that non-binary people don't owe anyone androgyny.
Yeah, and I also I'm also built to be who I look like. I mean, I've been in this body for 44 years. It's like there's things like I don't like shaving. Like shaving's a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
So I have a beard because it's easier than shaving. And I
The
try to
alternative is very long and very painful.
Yeah, exactly. It's an uncomfortable thing to shave every day, and so I don't want to do it, and so I have
Yeah.
a beard, and it's like,
Yeah.
I don't, ethically like glitter, so I'm not going to put glitter in my beard, and the world's just going to have to deal with it.
Hey, brats. My name is Ben and I'm trans.
My name is Robin and I'm trans.
And today we have a very special guest, Briar, one of our new friends. We just met recently through me and Briar's old person hobby of Facebook. And
Okay, boomers.
Thanks.
Ouch.
I'm very excited to have you on. Could you please describe your gender for us?
Yes. I am non-binary.
Oh, and your name.
Oh, yeah. My name's Briar. That's my chosen name. I am non-binary, though the terminology has only become, relevant to me in recent history. I've always struggled with gender identity, and it was really nice to have a word to put on the feelings I'd had for so long. We're kind of in an interesting time when it comes to gender identity, and I am always kind of in the process of finding myself. I'm a parent to 3 children who understand my gender and my pronouns, and it's kind of a wonderful thing because I was always, kind of forced into a gender box growing up. So
We understand that very well.
yeah, yeah.
How long have you been going by they, them for?
Since 2020.
That was a time for a lot of self-reflection.
It's a very common spawn point.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a complicated year for a lot of people.
Yeah. Do you have a moment of trans joy to share?
Yeah, so I had to put some thought into this because I think I probably struggle with joy. I'm a very depressive person a lot of the time. But I think a big moment for me was I was at the playground with my kids, and there's all these kids playing and all these parents standing around, and I'm often sitting there doing where do I fit in this parent group? Like, can I be open? Can I be out here? Like, do I have my mask on, right? And my daughter is playing with this kid she's been playing with for maybe half an hour, and they're walking up past me, like passing a doll back and forth together, and the other kid refers to me as he, and my daughter, 7 years old, like is like, oh no, my dad is non-binary. Their pronouns are they them, and the girl's just like, oh okay, and they just go on to keep playing, and it's like nothing, and it was like, I love that that's nothing, like because it seems like such a big thing to so many people out there. Kids know though, they're just like, oh okay, and they just move on.
Yeah.
It's
They
always
only make it a
easy.
big deal if they're taught to.
Yeah, it's always way easier for the kids than it is for the parents.
Hmm. Yeah, it's like, the things that prevent us from coming out sometimes, or that make us take a long time to come out, can be like just as simple as our, you know, perception of like of fear from those people around us. Like, like I go back to being in high school and people using the F word against me, and me being like, at that point I wasn't even aware I was, queer, like sexually either. At least not in any way I currently understand. And it was just kind of
Hmm.
like, one of those things. You just knew that I knew that there were always going to be these boys who were going to look at me and think that I was something that didn't fit into their world, which is fine by me because generally I
Hmm.
didn't really enjoy hanging out with most of them anyway. But like, high school's a weird
Hmm.
time of bullying, and you deal with all those kinds of things, and you reflect on that through a lot of your life. Like I still think about that in social situations, and it's like, I'm just adults don't usually say things to your face. They wait till they're on the internet.
Yep.
Yeah,
Hmm.
it's easy to put a, window between them, and just say, okay, this is on the computer, I can just ignore it, compared to, the in-person interactions that probably formed our fears and views of people. I was in my late teens when it, hard subjects, when Matthew Shepard was lost. And I remember that
Yeah.
being one of those things where it was like, even me just being in this weird place of being raised in a conservative Christian household. um like uh I knew I wasn't just I knew that was closer to me than I was willing to admit to myself at that point in my life. So the fears of other people always kind of kept me in the closet for a very long time in a lot of ways. I've been lucky enough to be able to be very open with my partner, the entire time we've been together, and that's almost 20 years now. So, I've always had a safe place at home, even though uh, I didn't out in the open world.
Yeah.
Sorry for the
That's
transition from
something that I
joy to like
think
fear, you know.
our episodes are roller coasters all the time. But I
Yeah,
think that's
that's
really
just like
familiar
our.
for
That's just the show in a nutshell.
That makes sense. It
it's
does.
familiar for Robin too,
Hmm.
being safe at home but not necessarily being open. But like
Yeah.
talking about it at home is something that Robin has talked about a lot.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know about you, but for me, it was in my home life, it was an extremely long and gradual transition, which ended up manifesting in the rest of the world with me kind of coming out one day, legally changing my name, just going all in. But in my like private life, in my home life, it had been a conversation that was going on with my partner and I for like years and years and years and years before then.
Yeah.
Did you have kind of a similar
Yeah,
experience?
in a weird way, because like I didn't even think that there was a non-binary existence, I didn't even know that
Hmm.
realm was a thing. So like, I questioned whether or not I was male for a long time. And like,
Yeah.
I think that, at the end of the day, I feel more agendered than anything else, but maybe with a little bit of gender fluid mixed in occasionally. Like, you know, like I like putting on a skirt. It's very comfortable. It's nice. It's gender affirming.
Hmm.
But I also
Hmm.
still feel comfortable in a beard. And it's, there's a lot of weird blending things in the middle where I'm trying to figure it out. But like, getting back to your question, so I think like early in our relationship, me and Sam, my wife, I discussed how I never really felt comfortable being male in a lot of ways. I never felt comfortable in male spaces. I always kind of felt like you hear those stereotypical, male comments about women and whatnot, and you're in those environments. And I was always just kind of grossed out and icked by it all the time, but didn't know what to
Hmm.
do. So a lot of times I would just shut up. I wouldn't say anything.
Hmm.
When I got older and braver, I would usually just be like, why is that funny? Or, try to find a way to,
Hmm.
disarm it a little bit. But also just that's the toxic male culture. So talking about my gender with my wife before having any terminology was just kind of like, I always questioned. I was always unsure. I always felt comfortable with femininity and less comfortable with masculinity. and it just kind of was a random thing that was in the background that wasn't really discussed. And then 2020 came around, and I was acknowledging so many things like, oh, I'm definitely neurodivergent and I might even be autistic, and all these other things are coming out, and I'm definitely not male, but having the term non-binary was really nice because it was like, there's also a lot of things about masculinity that just made me uncomfortable, and being able to distance themselves in my gender identity from that has been very freeing and comforting to me. And like, I never knew that there was a thing like gender euphoria. It was like back in Halloween 2012, me and my wife did drag. So we both swapped our birth genders, and that was like a wonderful experience for me. There were moments that were kind of like, okay, now that could be less. I could deal with less creepy behavior, but it was still fun and different and comfortable. And I remember having somebody who was like a coworker of mine at a brewery trying to grab my cleavage, and she was like, and it was like, that's okay. Like, I don't know how to deal with this right now, and it's like, this is how women have to deal with it all the time. And it was just a weird experience, but it was really good for me, and it was a funny, learning how to walk in heels was probably one of the most interesting experiences I had. I also learned how to fall in them a lot.
Yeah,
And
that's the spot I got to in
yeah,
27 years
yeah,
of experience trying to.
yeah. I mean, I was drinking and hanging out outside and walking on like uneven surfaces in this small town in Arizona, and it was like the amount of times I fell on my ass that night were many, many, many times. Especially trying to find heels that fit me as someone with very wide feet. I had like I
Mhm.
actually had to find heels that were bigger than I needed and pad the back of them using like part of a flip flop that I like cut a piece of foam out and put it in the back just so my heel would stop slipping the whole time. And but
That's
yeah,
amazing.
but it was a lot of fun.
Drag is very crafty.
It is. Yeah,
Yeah.
well, I mean, it was between that, and it was the duct tape and the foam footballs that I used to achieve cleavage. That was a whole thing. Duct tape is not something anyone should be using. Use trans tape, people. It's not. It's better for your skin
Yeah.
than duct tape. The amount of work it took to
Use
get that
most
off in the
other
shower.
options.
Yeah, I don't think there
Yeah,
was.
though if you do use trans tape to bind, look up safe binding methods, please.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I don't. So, yeah,
Yeah, that's
but
just a
Hmm.
blanket general
absolutely,
advice
yeah.
for anyone listening.
I think on the
If you haven't binded yet and you're learning how, just like get in the Discord and talk to Ben and a couple of our other friends who are assigned female at birth.
yeah.
Yeah,
Get advice before you do anything. Be safe.
yeah. Safety is key. You don't want to do permanent damage to your body.
Yeah, yeah. My wife played a male character in West Side Story in high school and did the whole ace bandage thing, and still talks about how awful and painful it was. And
And
yeah,
singing and having to breathe
Mm.
on a stage with
yeah.
ace bandages, that sounds like a nightmare on so many levels.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Oof.
He was
That's
he
what
was very
happens when you don't have
uncomfortable.
trans friends around.
Yeah, yeah. Well, this is also like at a time when I think there were less people who were comfortable in admitting that. So, which
Yeah.
was also high
Mhm.
school, which
Mm-hmm.
that
Yeah.
in itself, I mean, it's a different time now than it was back then for sure. A lot more people are able to
Yeah.
be out in the open, which is wonderful, though terrifying because
And are
we
you
live in
able to
America.
be open a lot? Yeah.
Um,
Um,
I don't, I'd say I have a pretty small community in general. So people who know me, yes. People who I actually have any type of real interpersonal relationships with, yes. I don't think ordinary people even recognize that I exist outside of the binary. So, like, there is some comfort in being like passing as male because like that's usually the dangerous space, right? So
mhm.
there is some comfort in that, but it's also like somebody called me sir at the grocery store, and they are a somewhere on the LGBTQI spectrum. I'm not entirely sure where. Um, and I said, I'm non-binary because I felt like, oh, this is probably safe. And then it was, oh, well, what do you
Hmm.
want me to call you? And it was like, Briar? Like, I don't know, like, just not
Yeah.
sir. Like, maybe don't choose a gendered way to instantly approach everybody, because you're going to, without doubt,
Yeah.
if you use sir and ma'am, you're going to misgender people. It's just going to happen
Yeah.
because you're
Just
making
say
assumptions.
friend or whatever.
Or,
Yeah,
Comrade.
yeah, say, hey,
I've been
you.
in food service like most of my adult life.
Yeah,
Even like long before ever coming out, like I always had that discomfort with like sir, ma'am, and everything. A
yeah.
lot of cis people do too, because like it makes you feel old sometimes.
Hmm.
But like I have made an effort forever to just like, there's moments where I have to like call to a customer across the room and I just like don't have any other words that I end up having to go with the sir or ma'am. But
Yeah.
like 99% of the time, there's a better option.
Well,
You're just like, hey, excuse me, or
yeah,
just
Mhm.
thank you.
yeah. We
Yeah.
we had a cafe for a while. I had a coffee roasting business, and we ran a cafe, and
Oh, wow.
we actually pushed the inclusive space. It was part of what ended us, I think. Um, but like, we had Black Lives Matter in our window for like, well, since 2020, and it upset a lot of people in the community. But I just knew people by their drinks, so like, you can always just say, "Hey,
Hmm.
macchiato," and that's a good way to talk to people.
Hmm.
It'll work. You
Mhm.
don't need to remember their names.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's true.
Hey,
Yeah.
vanilla bean,
yeah.
get over here.
Espresso doesn't have a gender, so
Yeah. So you have 3
I
kids.
do.
How has being a non-binary parent been in like interacting with schools if you're open in that context? Like, what's that world like? Because neither one of us has kids.
We homeschool, um, and
Oh, that's awesome.
that kind of happened because of COVID. So my son, who is 9 now, was in preschool the first year of COVID, and he ended up doing kindergarten
Damn.
remote through the school system. And then they started going back to in person. And this was, of course, like before, well, I mean, I don't even think kids' vaccines were available yet. There was no masking requirements. And we were just like, no. My wife has asthma, and we had a newborn in 2020. So we had our third child was born like a month after lockdown started. Um, so that was like its
Wow.
own crazy thing, right? So we started homeschooling because we didn't feel comfortable sending our kids back into this fray of, are they going to be okay? And we've been doing it ever since. And it's difficult sometimes, the schooling part, but like, um, I don't have a very favorable view of the school system in general, because of my own past experiences, but also because you hear weird stories, and we have neurodivergent kids, and I can only imagine the shit they would deal with. I mean, I think a lot of people, are neurodivergent, but like, that's
Hmm.
besides the point, because kids get a lot of grief for it in school. Whether it's like, teachers telling them they should be medicating, or like these days you have kids who are being like arrested out of schools, 7 8 year olds who are being like pulled out of class by the cops because they're having a tantrum, and it's like they just can't regulate. You can't hold that against them. Like, you can't treat them like that. But
And there's
from
so many resources these days.
yeah,
So like you don't have to worry about the social aspect because you can find like other groups of people who are like-minded and like get them their social interactions that way. And
absolutely.
if you need help with a subject matter, there's experts you can find that will help. So,
Yeah, and we're slowly figuring, that stuff out. Like, social is, our kids don't really struggle with it. Like, seeming, at least not from the sense of it seeming to be school related. Like, my daughters are both social butterflies. Like, you put them in a playground or any environment, and they're just like going to meet everybody. My son doesn't. And I think it's just a personality thing. Like, doesn't feel as
mhm.
comfortable in groups of people, getting to know people. It takes them a little more time. So we're slowly kind of, as we slowly get back out into the world, because we still mask indoors, like most places we go. We have been trying to find the social outlets that are working for everybody. So we are part of a group, a parents group that's out of like Brattleboro, which is, I don't know, half an hour from us. So we don't really get to a lot of the meetings, but it's basically a queer and trans parenting group. So, it's an opportunity to get together with people who are, like-minded and safe.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a few friends from there. Everyone's kind of busy with their own life. So we don't always get together as much as possible. They make friends quickly at playgrounds. And we recently started doing SCA events. Do you know about SCA?
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Yeah, I'm going to Penzic next month.
Oh, cool, cool. Yeah. So we kind of got brought into that by my sister-in-law, who was also non-binary, who has been like a great ally, who basically came through and introduced me with my pronouns to everybody at our first event this past spring. That was another trans joy moment, I think, where it was like hey, look, I don't even need to like let people know. Like someone else is doing all the hard work for me. It
Yeah.
was amazing for our kids at this event. Like it was like, we were just like me and Sam, my wife, have been like, costuming on and off for years. Like we did like steampunk, and we both have interest in various
Mm-hmm.
cosplay. And we were invited to SDA a while ago and never got involved. And I've always been kind of worried about it because of inclusion and stuff like that. But out here, anyway, it seems like a very safe and inclusive environment, and the kids
Yeah.
loved it.
For anyone who doesn't know what SEA is, it's the Society for Creative Anachronism, and it's like historical role play.
Hmm. And
It's so cool.
it's fun. Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out like what my in-world personality is, but I pretty much stayed with
It's
my
hard.
name because I've already had to change names recently. I'm not ready for a new one right now.
That's what I do too.
Yeah.
I just put on the gayest historical outfit I can because
Yeah.
Penzic it's 2 weeks. I go for 1 week, but it's like you're camping and you're in historical dress for the whole time.
Yep.
And I just put on as many different colors as I can in historical garb, whether it makes sense or not. And I'm just like, hi, I'm Ben.
Yeah.
Because I already had to reinvent myself. I don't have the mental energy for a persona.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. I like you just try to live in the one you're in well, and then leave it at that, right? Um,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Was there a link there for you between like your trans journey and getting into cosplay and role play and everything?
I'm not entirely sure. Honestly, I think D&D helped me embrace some things, and that's different. That's gaming, but like being able to sit at the table as a
Hmm.
DM and like allow myself to switch between characters that are different genders, and like just throwing gay characters into the game, like just normally, scattering them about instead of like
Mhm.
this world where everyone is supposed to just be like racist and heavily gendered. 'Cause that's the old school D&D. It's very like racism is a big part of the
Hmm.
game, for instance, and it's like so just trying to
Mhm.
erase that in the game and being able to play any character as who they are, and even a goblin could be a good guy. They're probably still a goblin, but like they could
They're
be a
still
good guy.
chaotic, but they could be
Yeah,
chaotic good.
yeah, or they could be chaotic
Yeah.
neutral, which means just like maybe like in my world they're usually in some weird like capitalistic work structure. So like they're really just following orders from some other goblin who's following orders from a hobgoblin who's following orders from someone else. But like it's like
Mhm.
the
They're
the,
just
the
bureaucrats.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, if you can get through the red tape, they're all fine enough. Or like one of my players ended up making one of the goblins like leave their environment and go start a tea shop in a city rather than staying with the goblin group they were in, and it's just fun stuff like that. But like yeah, role play is like that too, in even in like in-person events. I mean, in steampunk in Arizona, there was a lot of like heavy conservatism, and that was uncomfortable. Um, I was a
Mm.
little leery with SCA just because of our intro into it was in Arizona, and generally speaking, just in Arizona, you're more likely to run
Mhm.
into conservatism anyway. We were introduced as the liberal friends to people who would
Yeah.
say in their next breath that the only good liberal is a dead liberal. So I mean, it's one of those things where it's like comfortable environment. Oh yes, that exists.
So
Um,
Christ-like.
you're right. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's yeah. Coming from a priorly religious background, I'm always like, you didn't. I got the memo, and I don't even believe in that. So like, I don't understand what's going on here. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, but religion, and there's a whole nother thing, right?
Yeah.
Um, but
The SCA has like a little pride group called the Blue Feathers. I don't know if you're familiar with
I haven't
that,
heard of it.
but
No.
basically, yeah. So at Penzic, they even have an event called the Blue Feather Ball where anyone who's like an ally or gay or whatever, you just dress up and you go, and it's like a potluck, and you dance, and like they rent out a little barn, and it's really
Oh,
cute.
that's cool.
So there is like a pride group within, and then they have this vendor who sells lanterns, and they always do pride ones, and each pride flag, they're like Moroccan stained glass
Yeah.
lanterns. Each pride flag has its own charity they go to. So the trans one that I got, it's like a dragon egg, and all of the profits went to Lambda Legal, but then they do like the Trevor Project and all
Oh,
sorts
that's
of
really
different,
cool.
like there's a lot of pride at Penzic. So
Yeah.
the SEA, there's always going to be groups within that suck, but it's
Mm-hmm.
generally pretty inclusive.
Oh, that's very cool. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
where people exist, there's people that suck. So, I mean, yeah, this is part of it. Yeah.
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 Is Pensick part of the East Kingdom? Do you know?
It's in Pennsylvania.
Yeah. I don't know where the lines
It's
are,
only
so.
my second year this year.
Okay. Yeah, so you're kind of new
I
too.
think it might be East Kingdom,
Yeah.
but we're like a marauding group. So like we've got people from Atlantia, so Florida. We've got people from like the Carolinas. We've got people from Michigan. We've got people from Ohio. So like
Cool.
I don't have any need to memorize
Yeah,
the kingdoms because it doesn't apply to our camp.
that's fair. That's fair. Yeah, I have a
So,
we have
yeah.
a few friends we recently met that are talking about Pensick, and I don't know anything about it, so now I'm hearing things about it from somebody completely new to me. So this is interesting. Yeah.
If you go next year, we should meet up in person. You could come to our camp and we could do a D&D game. We do one. We did one last year, and I think it's like an annual thing that our friend group has done. My friend who invited me, her parents have gone since the first one, and her dad actually got knighted last year for being the first and only person to have fought in all 50 Penzic wars, including one where he had a heart attack mid-battle.
Yeah, that's heavy combat's no joke.
He's a badass.
Yeah,
Yeah, he is a badass.
yeah, that's pretty crazy. Yeah, there was just the Great New England War just happened, and there were a bunch of people who ended up having to be helped medically because of the heat, including a couple heavy combatants.
Yep.
Because you're out there in the armor, and I'm like, I can't believe this stuff doesn't happen like in the cooler seasons. Like I wouldn't want to be in armor in the summer. I can't even imagine. I
Well,
mean,
when they established these traditions, it was a different summer.
yeah, absolutely. And I mean, back when this time actually existed, though, we were in a mini ice age. So like it was cooler everywhere at all times
Mhm.
than it is now. So it was a completely different world than it is now. I would imagine.
I never
I'd rather
expected
do
this
it
to
in the
go
winter.
to SCA.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Me neither.
Exciting. No, this is really exciting. That's part of why we don't really prepare questions, is because like we want to
Yeah.
see where the story's going to go naturally and where the guest wants to go, because like we don't want to tell you what your story is that you should be sharing.
I get easily stuck in my special interest too. So, which is like right now it's like SEA because now I have to craft a whole bunch of things, and I'm a big crafter.
Mhm.
And
Me too.
I can see
I've
by
got
the
my
yarn
crocheting
behind
right
you. Yes,
Here.
I don't crochet.
I'm
I
working
can't
on
figure it out.
A skull
Oh, that's
granny
really
square
cool.
blanket
I love
for my
that,
husband.
yeah.
That's
Yeah.
really cool. My wife is the crocheter. So we also have a lot of yarn. I'm learning to knit, and I'm trying to learn to null bind
That's awesome.
because again SEA. So, yeah.
Mhm.
So little things like that. I'm the house sewer though. I'm the only person who knows how to sew in the house. So we
I've
recently
got
got a
two sewing
serger.
machines right to my left right now.
Yeah, very
Oh,
nice.
I want a serger so bad.
I don't have any space for anything in my house because we're in like a tiny apartment right now, and it's like I don't have any space for anything. So like our walls are full of shelves, and we have like 3-bedroom house worth of stuff crammed into a 2-bedroom apartment, which is probably good because we're moving into a tiny home after this because we're building one. So it's a whole thing. But I miss having crafting space. We did get a serger, but it's sitting under my bed right now because I don't have anywhere to permanently set it up. We got it for like $25 used, and we just need to like clean it.
That's amazing, because these for anyone listening, those can be like $1,200, $1,500,
hmm
depending on the serger.
Also, for anyone who doesn't
What's
know
a
what they are,
serger?
they basically it runs along the edge of fabric and will often like cut it as well. Most sergers have their own cutting on there, and it makes it so that the edge doesn't unravel. So like if you look at the inside of a pair of jeans on the inside of a seam, you can see that it's serged before it's folded over and sewn. It's like the overlocking.
It's got like
edges that go
thread
down the
wrapped
outside.
around the edge. It's on, yeah.
Yeah.
I've only dabbled in sewing, maybe not as much as you might expect from somebody who's watched like 20 seasons of Project Runway, but
I
I've
mean,
always
why
just
not
had too
though?
many hobbies running at the same time.
And now you
Very
spend all your
fair.
time editing like a
Hmm.
fucking boss woman. So,
I just rotate hobbies. Yeah. This hobby is rotated back from, the year would have been like 2002 ish. I don't know. I was a film major for a minute and then I dropped
Oh, cool.
that, just in a moment of whatever. Yeah. So now I'm relearning all of those skills to
Yeah,
use for this very specific purpose.
that's fun stuff though. Editing is fun. I've done a little editing myself. I've always had an interest in film.
Hmm.
I got to be in a terrible low budget horror movie, but I now have an IMDb page, which needs to be updated because it's not my current name. Um,
Nice.
so yeah,
that is amazing.
Speaking of horror films and, being trans, have you seen I Saw the TV Glow yet?
I have not.
I haven't either,
Okay.
but I need to.
All of you need to watch it.
You're gonna need to post the
It's
link somewhere.
I will absolutely post the link. I'm going to make both Ben and my friend Dan, who we're going to hopefully have on the show soon. Dan was in film school with me for a little bit. That's how we kind of met to begin with. But we're going to get a little bit into like media and film when it comes to like trans experiences. But like, highly recommend I Saw the TV Glow.
And then was that documentary called Disclosure?
And Disclosure, yeah. Really recommend that too. Disclosure is like a documentary. It's on Netflix, but it was produced by like an entirely trans cast and crew, like everything from the talking heads to like craft services, which is like really cool in itself. But it was just a documentary where they're interviewing all these different trans people about like the media that they consumed growing up and how it represented trans people and like how that affected them. Ben and I both watched that and I think had a lot of things stand out to us that we maybe didn't even remember watching when we were kids. And when we saw it again, it was like, oh my God, it's like triggering just like how we saw ourselves misrepresented for so many years and how it just like
Yeah.
caused
It
so
dissected
much.
a lot of tropes.
Mm-hmm. And just
Yeah.
like a lot of both like fear and internalized transphobia came from that.
Yeah. I'll have to watch it with a trigger warning now. Like
Yeah.
everything always pulls out trauma.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Everything is traumatic.
Hmm. But yeah, I need to look up the director's name, but like they're a non-binary director, kind of a rising star in the film world. They did another horror film a few years ago called We're All Going to the World's Fair. But I Saw the TV Glow is like, it's specifically like a horror film where the scary part of it is being in the closet. And it's really interesting reading the reviews of the movie that were written by trans people versus written by cis people. It's like they were watching a completely different movie because like just every trans person I've known who's seen it has been like, I was scream crying after I watched the movie. And then like all the cis people are like, it's such a weird, quirky movie.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Highly recommend. It might devastate you, but it's like so good.
Yeah.
That's why I haven't watched it yet, because I've been off thyroid meds for almost 2 years, and my mental capacity is
Mhm.
very diminished. And I want to be able to give it the respect and attention it deserves, and like
Yeah.
follow it.
Yeah. Watch it with a friend too, or with your partner.
Mhm.
Is it intentional to be off thyroid meds? Just curious.
A lot of medical gatekeeping and trauma that have made me fear doctors in general, but I
That's
have an
fair.
appointment in 8 days to
Yeah.
get back on.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
hypothyroid, so I've been on thyroid meds since I was like
Mhm.
15, and
Oh my gosh, we're both early onsetters. I was
Yeah.
14.
yeah, my hormones were doing all sorts of weird things when I was young. Like so, like I was I was technically I needed to be on them when I was like 12, but no
Mhm.
doctors would check my thyroid out. I got moved to adult medicine at 15 because of that, and that's when I ended up on thyroid meds. And it's yeah, it's a lot of fun to know that you're,
Is
essentially like
yours autoimmune or regular?
my current doctor, after doing a whole bunch of like, background work and whatnot, is pretty sure that it was Hashimoto's induced. But
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
I
what I
don't know.
have.
I don't really trust doctors. So, yeah, I don't, we'll
Yeah.
figure it out. I went through a whole thing this past year where like my doctor thought I had Lyme disease and I didn't.
Hmm.
It's spoiler alert. But like I got tested for like STIs and all sorts of other things. And I was like, I don't need the STI testing. And she was like, well, let's just do it anyway. And I'm like, I don't need the STI testing. She's like, let's do it anyway. And it's like, so you don't trust me or my partner, and that's fine. But I knew it wasn't a problem. So I had so
Hmm.
much blood draws and peeing in cups and all the fun stuff just to find out they couldn't find anything wrong with me. So my mystery diagnosis
That's
ongoing. So
that's my life too. It's
yeah,
like there's so much more going on than just the Hashimoto's, and I know like especially if you have a trauma background, you tend to get a lot more autoimmune problems, and once you have one, you're more likely to get more.
yeah,
And it's like, well, you have a positive ANA, but we're not going to get more specific than that because it's hard. And it's like, well,
yeah.
I kind of want to know what's going on so I can try to feel better. And
I
they're like, but it's hard.
I know that my pain problems are better when I'm on antidepressants, and I don't like that. It's a weird thing. So I'm on
Hmm.
like escitalopram, and my pain problems are better, but I don't like being on escitalopram. So it's like one of those things where I'm like this weird stuck zone. I'm trying to figure out what's best for me overall existence wise. Um, Now I'll figure it out one of these days.
Yeah, that gave me insomnia so bad.
Yeah,
Escitalopram,
yeah. I
like
just had really
horrible
bad
insomnia,
dreams when I start
and
taking it.
night sweats.
Yep.
Oh, I have those every night, no matter what,
Oh, I still have bad dreams,
since I
but
was
they were,
3.
yeah, they were really bad. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. These days my dreams are all like nightmares, as in family trauma nightmares. So,
Hmm.
it's a completely different kind of nightmare. Oh, it's like, no, it's not well, they are monsters, but different kinds of monsters.
Yeah, last Penzic one morning I like went to our pavilion tent, which serves as our living room, and my friend whose parents have been doing Penzic forever was like, "Were you mad at us last night?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And she was like, "At 3 a.m. you were yelling, 'Fuck you, fuck you.'" And I was like, "Oh, I was talking to my mom, it's fine."
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's bad. It's bad when it becomes loud. Yeah.
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 We don't need to get into this any more than you're comfortable with,
Yeah.
but you did mention like, family trauma and your religious background.
Yeah.
Would you be interested in talking? Because I'm sure I
I'm
have a lot of
very,
overlap with that. We did a
yeah.
whole episode about my family religious trauma, so.
I, I'm very open to sharing. So
Okay.
I was 5 when my parents became Jehovah's Witnesses. And it was weird
Ooh.
for me as a 5-year-old because, like the stupid part of it, like,
Hmm.
I just gotten used to birthdays and Christmas and the fun things that happen. And then all of that was stripped away. So that was my my initial trauma with it was just like oh, now I don't get to have fun anymore. And then, fast forward,
Hmm.
to me being a prepubescent human and dealing with all the shame that comes with being in a strong religious environment, with anything that involves sexuality or just about anything. Where is there no shame controlling you in staunch religious environments, right? Um, but like I was never comfortable in this environment. And, Jehovah's Witnesses are also very much like you're not even supposed to communicate with people outside of the religion. They actually started calling them worldlings while I was in there. It's not how it started off, but worldling became a term that started being used. And, I'm here like my alarm bells are going off and I'm just a kid, right? I'm like, this is weird. And I have friends in school who I'm not supposed to be friends with, who I'm friends with in school. And then I have friends in, Kingdom Hall or church that I'm allowed to be friends with. And it's always just like you basically have to code switch your entire youth when you're in a religious environment if you're living outside of it as well. So like, I'd have these friends that were outside of the religion who were like my close friends, and my friends in the religion were just the people I was kind of forced into that community, the people I would get dropped off with, or get to hang out with. And a lot of traumas came from those relationships over time, including some abuse, um, and some of the dark stuff happened in the religious side of things, and never in the outside world, which is very strange. But
Mm-hmm.
we all know, thanks to a lot of public knowledge about religion, including the biggest one, um, Catholicism,
Mm-hmm.
that there's a lot of abuse and trauma out there from that. And yeah, so a lot of it had to do with just how it affected my home life. You know, um, my parents being who they are, um, were just kind of like looking for something that made them feel like they were doing something right for them and their families. I think initially when they got into it, hopping from religion to spirituality and whatnot up until that point, and then the cell of Jehovah's Witnesses, like you do this and then you get to live forever in a paradise earth after, and it's like, I mean, that's a pretty strong sell for someone who can believe in that. I am not a faith oriented
Mm-hmm.
person.
Mm-hmm.
I need proof. I need facts. I need something to give something meaning in order for it to work for me. And I've always been like that. And I was always uncomfortable with the idea of the environments I was in. And then when you build up these layers of shame and fear, and then suddenly you end up in an abusive situation. Um, and SA, um, is that a term that everyone understands here? Probably. Um,
I think
Mm-hmm.
so.
We
yeah.
yeah, we put extensive trigger warnings
Good. Good.
in the
Okay.
show notes too. So
So feel free to just blah. Yeah.
mhm.
So
Yeah, I've
Mm-hmm.
I've been yeah, I've been time coding them and everything.
okay.
So
So
just any listeners, just jump down there.
Take care
If
of yourself.
we all
yeah,
have PTSD, so
yeah. Um,
take care of yourself. Press
so I
pause if you
ended
need to.
I ended up in a situation with a group of not really friends, but extended friends, people from the church who I was really young at the time. I think I was 10 or 11, and most people were older than me, and it was not how I wanted to be introduced to any part of my sexuality. But these were all boys, and one of them was related to me. I'm not going to get super specific on those details just because that person is still alive and exists, and is not
Hmm.
something that I have ever dealt with in human interaction. I'm not in contact with them anymore, and I doubt they would ever hear this. But regardless,
Mm-hmm.
um, and yeah, those situations were very scary and confusing, and also I was 11. I wasn't really there, like I wasn't there physically or mentally, or like, so this was all before I had any interest in sex in any way. And you know I think I'm still kind of coming to terms with some of that through therapy and everything else. But this went on for at least a couple of years. um and
Oh,
uh
Is this how old were you at this time?
that starting from
max
11 till
max
13.
max 12, I think. So it started my
Okay.
my
Yeah.
to get into another trauma. Well, my mom left when I was 10. And then so suddenly we went from like my mom being she was a she was she was a homemaker, she was home, like she was a stay-at-home mom, to being latchkey kids.
Hmm.
And my dad worked in Boston, so he had like a 40-minute transit to work every day. Basically, we didn't see him until dinner time, and then it was just we were suddenly latchkey kids, and so my older brother was just entrusted, 13-year-old, um, was just entrusted with making sure that I was okay, because I was always hanging out with him. Um, that didn't work out well. But like, so my mom left for a year, and suddenly, all this stuff started going sideways in my life in general. My mom, effectively abandoned us and all this other shit. And then the abuse started, and that went on for a while until it just stopped, and there was no like, moment that I remember. It just kind of ended, no longer happened. Um, and then life went on. My mom came back a year later, pregnant with my younger brother. who came from another relationship where she left to pursue. And then my parents got back together, and then everything went back to normal for them, but nothing went back to normal for me. And I spent the next however many years dealing with like massive depression, stuff that I can now acknowledge as like, going through the trauma and the grief of losing who I was and losing my innocence at an age that didn't make any sense. And yeah. Uh, and eventually, when I was 15, my dad said that if I didn't want to go to, if I didn't want to be a Jehovah's Witness anymore, I could finally stop going. And I made that decision quickly. And I was like, no, of
Wow.
course not. I'm not going to go anymore. I still had occasional times when he would like invite me to come to Kingdom Hall and all that kind of stuff. But like, no, it was, yeah, it was rough. Um, and I eventually got to move away from it. And it was only a couple years ago that I even like did the work of deconstruction where I was like, wow, it really was like an evangelical, radical Christian environment. I always thought of it as a cult, but like I never really
Mm-hmm.
knew that I was in that category of people. In my youth, I didn't know that those were the people I grew up with. And now that I'm no contact with my family, I can see that, there was always this vein of conservatism that was there, which didn't help me, didn't make me feel comfortable. You're a radical leftist. Hello. So it's
Hmm.
it's a it's a weird thing to come to terms with all of this stuff like kind of at once too. It's been like a weird whirlwind of like therapy
Yeah,
and acknowledgement and finding new friend groups and grief. Our business died during COVID, and I'm no contact with my family's grief, even though it's easier most days. It's still
absolutely.
grief. I'm constantly, these were people who were a part of my life for 40 years, it's very strange. And there are a lot of factors that made it
And they're supposed to be the
easier.
ones who can love you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I think, like one of those things to be fair to people, I think they probably love me the best they can and the best way they can. They they all need fucking therapy. I can tell you that much. But like, that they don't want to work on themselves, and that's where things left off. And then my one statement to my mother turned into me losing everybody because matriarch, and uh, she either misinterpreted or lied to everybody, making it seem like I just didn't want to talk at all. When it was just like, no, you need to like we need to talk about stuff. We need honesty. I need transparency. I'm in therapy. I'm working on things. You may not want to go to therapy, but I still need those things from you. Um, and of course, this was all on the heels of
Sounds extremely familiar.
Yeah,
yeah,
same. It was all revolving around my mom.
yeah, and it was all on the heels of COVID and like them not coming out to visit. We just had a baby. They never met my youngest. And my oldest was the one who had the strongest relationship with them, but he understands. I'm honest. I've explained. I said there's a lot of stuff there that doesn't work, and it's painful and it's hard, and I don't want to see you hurt. And that's where we are right now. It's like no one has picked up the phone and tried to call me in all these years now.
Hmm.
So that's also on them. It was I didn't say don't call me. I said call me if you want to talk this out. Instead, I got some random, one-way communications, some random letters or cards here and there, just the thinking about you, missing you cards, and it's like I don't want to play that. I need
Hmm.
if we're gonna have communication, it has to be two ways, not you saying what you need and letting me just what am I going to do? Send you a card? That's not how I communicate. I'd rather text message, to be honest with you. I don't even want to be on the phone half the
Hmm.
time. But like, it's just a
Same.
whole thing. And
Triggering.
things got really complicated. Like my younger brother uh, went kind of white nationalist. I don't think there's a halfway point. Um, and that kind of
No.
led to me being like, well, I can't have my kids around him. And
Yeah.
that led into family stuff getting more complicated, which all then bled into COVID, which bled into this is good reason, and then me kind of acknowledging myself and being more honest about things and realizing who I could and who I couldn't come out to in different ways in my family. um, I thought I was going to still be on good terms with my sister, but she got upset at me for being quote mean to my parents, and I haven't heard from her since. My last conversation with my dad that wasn't work based because I still work with him was it ended off with like him calling me an asshole and hanging up on me. So it's just like this whole thing where it's like we all made choices, and I'm honest, and that's where I'm just hanging in my head. It's like I'm brutally honest. I think living in a house full of people who were always trying to cover their own asses and not take responsibility for things kind of led to me just being like, I'm going to be honest if it kills me. And either people can deal with that and love
Mm-hmm.
me for who I am, being that honest person, or not. Because life's too short and I don't have time for bullshit. So, yeah.
I'm really
Especially,
sorry everything happened. That everything happened, by the way.
Well,
yeah.
I have therapy right after
Just
this, so
sorry.
I'll get
I'm
to just
sorry you
kind
had
of
to go
lead
through
into
all
that.
that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah, right. We'll stir some stuff
yeah.
up for you.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it sucked, but we all went through shit, and it's it's
Hmm.
our experiences are not, you know, that different from each other. It's just, and I say this to most people who are dealing with
Mm-hmm.
trauma, especially those people who are under the trans umbrella, who were probably trying to figure out who they are a lot of their lives. And then you have all this stuff like I have imposter syndrome too. So like I even like when I came out as non-binary, I kept doing the like, am I taking up space from
Mm-hmm.
someone else who's more trans than me? Like that whole kind of thing. And it's like the like what do I
So
allow
common.
myself space to
Hmm.
exist in this world? No, I'm the kind of person who's trying to like keep my voice down to not disturb people in environments while I'm simultaneously usually one of the loudest people in the room. I don't have this voice and it doesn't carry. Like people can hear me through three doors away because I have a booming voice, just how the life I've lived. And taking up space is hard for me. And you put imposter syndrome on top of that, and you're like, where do I fit in? Oh, am I always just a poser in every environment? And it's like, no, it's like I'm allowed to be confident and comfortable with who I am, but like I have to fight that all the time because I have mental health problems and I have to deal with that, mixed in with everything else. So allowing myself to exist is always a bit of a challenge. So
All of my non-binary friends and
yeah,
all of my bisexual friends have had like the same experience. I'm
yeah,
not trans enough, I'm not gay enough, and like unfortunately there's like in queer culture there can be a lot of people who feed into that and are like yeah you're but
yeah,
like you are not just talking to you, to everybody, like you are completely valid.
yeah,
I think even the most like binary of trans people also have imposter syndrome all
yeah.
Hmm.
the time. I
Absolutely.
do,
Well, and there's
I'm
also like
sure.
there's so much erasure in this world. I mean, my wife
Hmm.
who's bi and came out a long time ago to you know show certain people anyway. Like always dealt with the that just means you like to kiss girls in the room with other people. And it's like, no, that's not what that means. It's not some trope where
Hmm.
you think that it's just like, you're bi for the views, and that's like something that's echoed through her life,
Yeah.
forever. And like, I'm like I was like bi or pan, and essentially, they kind of mean the same thing anyway, and I mean, I was still scared coming out to my wife, even though I knew she supported me, and I knew it likely wouldn't be an issue, But like we've even had conversations as I'm still trying to, navigate all the little parts of my gender identity, where it's like no matter what direction I go, it
Mhm.
doesn't seem like it would affect my family in any way, and that's pretty wonderful, to know that my partner is here
That's
with me
amazing.
um, through all of this. We've been, oh God, we're going to be 20 years together in a couple years, 20 years married in a couple years. So, um, and we've been through a
Hmm.
lot of
Yeah, we
shit.
just had our 17-year anniversary like a few days ago.
Congratulations. Yeah.
And like similar situation, like all of this evolving and coming out process happened in a long-term relationship that we were in. Ben and I did a whole episode about this actually that will have aired before we have this conversation. So hey listeners, remember the episode? But I do mention in that episode Like when we were just starting this process, if you Googled anything, if you tried to like look up other people's stories, there's only nightmare stories if you look online.
Yeah.
And then after having come out on the other end of this and survived and like thrived as a couple and everything, and just like meeting more people in the trans community, it's like there's as many people whose relationships turned out like ours did as failed relationships. So like I just really want people to have more hope and go into it more in a positive perspective.
Yeah, because if you go in expecting to fail, you're more likely to fail.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think what it proves more than anything else is that if your relationship was going to fail, this isn't what's going to end it. It's going to fail if it's going to fail.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of like
Yeah.
how most relationships work. It's like there's either you're in love with the person you're in love with, you're with the person you're with, or you're not, because that person was that person the
Mm-hmm.
whole time, regardless of whether or not even they knew it. So,
Mm-hmm.
it's a
Yeah.
big thing to love and understand someone for who they are. I mean, I have less conditionality in my relationship with my spouse, you know, than I did with with my birth family, and that's an interesting perspective. Most people are like, "Oh, your family loves you unconditionally," and it's like, whose family now? Uh, like, that's not really how it works. Like, my chosen family loves me unconditionally.
No.
That's a very different thing. So.
Yeah.
And there's still conditions with everybody to some degree, but like that's fair. I mean, you don't
Mm-hmm.
get to
Yeah, like
just be a
don't be
radical
an awful
asshole.
person.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
I'm an asshole sometimes. I apologize. That's how I get through. So
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
try to get better over time. I know I'm flawed. So human and all.
But who isn't?
Yeah. Well, I,
Yeah.
nobody. I don't really believe there is anybody or anything that's not flawed, because we all just exist. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
This is awesome. It's so fun to meet new friends.
I know. Also, I need to point out, like, if anybody who's watching the video version of this, can you confirm that my cat is dead right behind me?
Just gotta show off that tom tom.
I have never been that comfortable in my skin in my life. Luffy
Yeah, I
is an
was looking at
inspiration to
him.
us all.
He's beautiful.
Yeah.
I can confirm there is a kitten in my basement right now. I'm very excited. She's home from the shelter.
I'm
We have no
so
fluffies
excited
in
to
the
meet
house.
her.
Well, you could borrow mine if you want to make a road trip pretty
We'll
far south.
we'll get there
Not all
once
the
we
way
get.
far south.
Yeah, we have non-fluffies. We have a snake, and we have two lizards, and we have a fish tank with shrimp. So there are critters.
That's awesome.
We have some interesting critters. We actually just adopted a leopard gecko that had a bad shed a while ago and is missing toes. So his name is
Oh,
Pascal
poor
the
baby.
Toeless. He's a real sweetheart though. We think he's also part blind because he's not very good at finding his food. But we rescued him and we're giving him a good home. Then we have like a tiny little Western banded gecko. He's like the size of like the 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 last two knuckles of my pinky. Um, and he's a tiny
Oh,
little gecko who needs a remarkable amount of heat. So this summer has been less than wonderful because his heat lamp is like putting off 250 watts of heat towards his tank, and he sits at like
poor guy.
100 on
Poor
the warm
family.
side. Yeah, we'll survive. And then we have a I think I believe it's an anthristic corn snake, which is like a black and gray named Mavis, um, who's pretty wonderful too.
Very good
So,
name.
and then we had a lot of shrimp, and then we went on vacation, and now we have way less shrimp. So I think the fish got aggressive when we were on vacation and ended up taking out some of the shrimp. So such is life when you're a
They want a
75
shrimp
cent
cocktail.
invertebrate. Yeah, exactly. I like shrimp cocktail
Mm-hmm.
too, and once you have one, you're gonna keep going back, and then there's no shrimp left.
That's fair enough.
Yeah.
Man, this has been such a fun conversation. Is there anything else we need to cover? I want to make sure everything that you want to say, if there's anything else you want to say, gets said.
If you
I
have any
always
soapboxes
Yeah.
that you need to stand on,
oh geez.
that you haven't stood on yet today.
this is my first time being on a podcast, and it was actually a wonderful experience for me because I still have some hope of doing an actual play podcast at some point on my own, which is a completely different subject.
Yeah.
But I'm a big fan of listening. I'm a consumer of podcasts, and I've always loved having an opportunity to be involved in anything that's media based, like a little bit of film history and that kind of stuff too. I don't really have a soapbox. Everyone be good to each other. Trans rights are human rights, right? We all know that one.
Hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
the only way we're going to get through this is together. It's a weird time to be in
Yeah.
America, or the world in general, and we have to find our solidarity where we can. And I'm still finding my queer trans community. I've never really had much of a community, and I'm slowly finding it, and that's been a wonderful experience for me.
Yeah. Same.
When
That's a lot of the journey of us doing this podcast too, is kind
yeah,
of like forming that community.
Yeah,
when you get started on your actual play podcast, definitely make sure we get the link so we can add it
Yeah.
to the description of your episode and put it in resources in our server,
I
so
will.
everyone knows how to find you.
I will. I have to finish building my house
'Cause
first.
that would be amazing.
Hmm.
That's where I'm stuck building a house right now. So
Hmm.
It's gonna be cool.
it's a crazy experience trying to build your own house, like building it, not paying people to build it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's really good for our family and our kids, and they're already talking about the houses they're going to build on our property, and this is our way of giving them generational wealth because we're not going to have money to leave them, but we can at least have somewhere where they can have a safe place where they can build their own little place to come back to no matter what the world throws at them. So um, that's what we're hoping to give our kids. And meantime, I'm just tired and have a lot of work ahead of me. We just built an emergency chicken coop because we lost like half our flock to a fox. So
Mm.
yeah,
Gosh, they're so cute but so mean.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I wouldn't. I was worried I was going to have to do something about the fox, and instead we were able to get the coop built, and so now I can let the fox live its life off in the woods somewhere. So farm life is the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, I don't really have anything to say other than that. So I had fun talking and dredging up my traumas because I'm good at that.
Yeah, me too. It was really good to meet you, like face to face, voice to voice.
Yeah.
To all of the listeners out there who may or may not be in the Discord, Briar is in the Discord with us as well. So we've interacted a tiny bit in the past, and like I'm excited to get to know you a little bit more in the future. Maybe we can even bring you back sometime and talk film history and queerness in film, which is a huge topic that I'm always happy to come back to.
And I think we should do a D&D episode someday where a bunch
Oh.
of us play D&D together.
Yes,
That's
there's so
So,
many
I
of
think that
us
would be
who
fun.
do D&D too. So
absolutely. Yeah, I'm here for that. Absolutely.
absolutely.
Yay.
Okay.
Hmm.
Awesome.
In that case, I've been Ben and I've been trans and I've been hanging out with my friend Briar.
I've been Robin and I've been trans and I've been hanging out with my friend Briar.
And check us out next week on Tuesday.
All right, we'll see you later, brats.
You have an
Okay.
amazing voice, by the way.
Thank you.
And I imagine since you are a DM, you probably have a lot of voices within you. Because a lot of DMs do.
I do though. It's always like there's the planned voice, and then there's when you
Uh-huh.
hit the table, and then it's just like, why does my throat hurt? Because I just go to this weird gravelly spot all the time with any like all this time and effort. I'll have these voices. I'll be practicing, and I'll sit at the table, and it'll just come out the same. Like
Yeah, my husband's a DM and he practices voices when he's in the car. And then
Yeah.
when he gets to the table, it's one of 3 voices every time.
exactly, and it's like I know they're there. They exist. Like I'll goof around the house all the time. And then when I sit down, it's just that one voice that hurts my throat all the time. Or like
Yeah.
or like the trying to get my voice to go feminine is always a challenge for me because I have a naturally very deep voice. So it's like the like
Mm-hmm.
I find myself doing the like there's only so many places I can go with it. So it's a lot of head voice because nothing can come out of my diaphragm without it being very deep. So it's a weird thing.
Well,
Well,
I think that's cool.
we're going to need you to do the entire episode in a gnome voice, though. So I hope you're prepared. I don't know if Ben told you ahead of time.
I definitely
No.
I've been stuck in goblin voice for a number of sessions, and that's always been one that has gotten people like laughing a lot because it's like because goblins are just chaotic, so you just end up going all over the place. So I have to prepare myself because we're about to do a Monster of the Week campaign with some friends, and it's going to be like Victorian London, so I have to get all my bad
Yes.
British accents out, so that'll be a lot of fun. Like no one should set the bar at good British accent because I will butcher words here and there. But I'll probably have to watch a bunch of things beforehand just to prepare myself. So
My British accent is just this, and then I go in it.
In it, governor.
Sorry.
Governor.
Governor.
You have the choice. Do
Governor.
you enunciate every sound in the word or not?
I don't remember who all was involved in this conversation in the Discord, but I'm dying to do with the character in D&D that's like a fey creature who steals people's pronouns. What are your pronouns? They, them? No, they aren't anymore.
Yeah. Then that person could never have gender euphoria, though.
Well, I didn't say it was good.
Yeah. It's one of those. It's one of those
chaotic,
state
evil.
Good.
Yeah, it's definitely a stay toxic moment, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But I mean, you gotta learn if you're talking to Fae to give them the wrong pronouns.
Yeah,
so they don't have power over you.
Confuse them.
Same rules with giving your name to a witch.
Yeah,
gotta be smart out there.
Are there witch name rules?
Oh, no.
I feel like I missed something now.
I think it's generally agreed upon in culture that you're not supposed to give your name to a witch because then they have power over you.
Power of a name or whatever is like, it's in a lot of cultures.
I think I know too many witches,
more like
and none of them really scare me. So,
yeah, I think it's like a old timey like folklore thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it's a D&D thing. It's just
no, it's not a D&D thing.
No, D&D doesn't even really accept that witches exist. There's no witches in D&D canon,
that's fair.
really.
Just hags.
Yep, and that's just like that's all types of gender stereotypes.
Mm-hmm. Well, D&D loves stereotypes.
Yeah, it's hard to try to keep them out of your game.
No witches or hoes. Yeah.
All right. So should we do the thing?
Yeah.
Should we be podcasters?
We should cast a pod.
Cast a spell.